Tech Talk with Matthew Dickerson. Matthew Dickerson. Tech Talk. Sit back and relax. It's time to talk technology.
Hello, summertime superstars. It's stinking hot here in Australia with the smell of eucalyptus, sunscreen and bushfire smoke wafting through the air. And that means that it must be nearly Christmas time, folks. Ho, 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 ho. Welcome to Tech Talk with Matthew Dickerson, the Christmas 2025 edition. Now, in today's Yuletide episode, we have a very Christmassy pillowcase full of goodies. And here's a sneak peek before Mum and Dad arrive. We're going to see how life is about to get better for sufferers of diabetes. Yes, we'll also double down on the waste not, want not philosophy and look at how we can recycle your number ones for the farmers. And we'll meet Tilly Norwood, who's going to ruffle feathers in Hollywood very soon. But be that as it may, we want to dive in and start unwrapping these goodies, and that is going to require the help of a jolly old man in a red suit, fake beard, and a head full of the latest tech news. Welcome Matthew Dickerson to the microphone.
And all those smells, I thought it was just you and I after having done parkrun this morning. But it's actually summer. Okay, great.
Yeah,
I love
that's
it.
the smell.
It's all part of summer. So this week I had the chance to go and play with some trains. There's a new...
And were you wearing, well, if you were English, you'd be wearing a Pack-a-Mac.
Well, you would be, but I didn't get to do
And you'd
that.
have a notepad as well, wouldn't you?
That's right.
Yeah, okay.
And I'd be a train controller, maybe, with an overweight train controller.
Playing with trains sounds like a great idea.
It is. And one of the things that was fascinating about this, so there's a new maintenance facility that's being built, and we got to go and have a look at that maintenance facility and just look at the trains that are being built. There's a new rollout of trains across the state of New South Wales. That's all very exciting. But one of the things that I learned, which seems bleedingly obvious when you talk about it afterwards, but it hasn't been done before in this state, is that the new train rollout for regional and metro is a train that's a bi-mode train.
Right.
So it can run as a diesel electric, as most regional trains are, because they don't have overhead power lines. So it's running on diesel to produce electricity to then run electric motors on the wheels. So that's fine. That's it.
Yeah, so you got the diesel motor and then the electric motor kicks in later.
Well, no, the diesel motor is actually, its whole job in life is to produce electricity to power the electric motors on the actual wheels. And the reason they do that is, as we've talked about before, you've got all this torque available from zero. So when you've got this heavy train and you want to get going from zero speed to get up, you don't really have a chance to get the revs up. Yeah. You've got electric motors that have got all that torque available so they can get it going straight away. So that's been a standard process with diesel electric trains, with regional trains for a long time. But these trains do something a bit extra, which, again, seems obvious that they should have done this a long time ago. When they get into the city network, the metro network, you've got overhead power lines to power all the trains that are running through the city. But normally, if you're going from a regional area on a diesel electric train, it would get into the city environment and it would keep running the diesel engine to keep powering the electric motors to keep moving along.
Now, that's something I've never thought about, but it seems so logical.
So now
the new ones
now have a little arm that pops up.
The arm that pops up. Well, that's what I was envisaging as you were telling the story.
So
right.
When they get to the city, when they get into where the overhead power lines are, they have the little arm that pops up and it then runs along as a full electric train. It doesn't need the diesel engine to run, and it's still got electric motors. So that kind of makes sense that now you've just got an electric power source from external to power those trains.
So what I find surprising about that is we haven't done that before.
Correct. That's when they were telling us at this particular facility, and I've gone, you mean we haven't done that before? And you're thinking about going, no, I've never seen a train that had something that popped up out of the train.
Yeah.
Wow, that's obvious. I know for a fact it's a first in the state of New South Wales.
Right.
I don't know whether it's the first across the nation. The people there on the day, I did ask that question. They said they think it is, so I can't really put any definite credence to me saying, I think so. But you can research that yourself if you like, but definitely in this state. But again, it seems obvious, but a good step forward. And of course, we do know that they'll keep looking at other ways to power trains. But the fact that you've got electric motors already, sure, diesel's being used at the moment to produce electricity, not a great way to produce it, but they might keep looking at other ways they can get that onto there. Maybe they just put bigger batteries. Maybe they carry another carriage that's got a bunch of batteries on there. I'm not sure. But when you get to that stage, and we've talked about this before, when you can actually have electric motors on all the carriages, you're taking away a lot of that workload from one engine per se and having all the carriages do the work. They're not doing that yet with these trains in New South Wales. They still run engines and they still have carriages, but you've got that ability to switch between the two modes, hence the BI mode, B-I mode, not B-U-Y mode.
Well, how about that?
Very cool.
Very interesting. All right, now, folks, grab your coconut ice and your fruit mince pies and find your comfy spot on the lounge. Let's get tech talking. Now, our first story first made world news, several weeks ago, but it was really big news when it kicked in. Aussie teens have been cut out from social media platforms as of December 10. The whole move has been put in place to reduce damage to young people's mental health and been endorsed by prominent politicians and child psychologists alike. But with the world watching, Matt, what are your thoughts on the longer-term prognosis of this ambitious move?
Yeah, it's ambitious, definitely, and it's been going for a couple of weeks now, and there's all sorts of interesting stories that have popped up over the last couple of weeks. Probably the most amusing of all those, I think, is the fact that you've got two 15-year-olds who are putting a legal challenge, challenging the Australian government in the rules that they've applied. And so they've been given the ability to seek to overturn that in the High Court. Now, what I find most amusing about this is that the High Court said, yeah, sure, we'll hear this, but they're 15 years of age at the moment. Having seen other things go through the High Court, they'll be 18 before before it actually gets there. They'll be accessing social media and they'll go, who cares about it now? I'm 16 and it's all over and done with. But obviously it will be interesting for people that come along behind that. But you're right, I'm not a psychologist. I don't pretend to be an expert in psychology, but all the information I've read from the experts says that this is to protect the minds of young people and to protect the bodies of young people, because typically you'll get some people out there who, and direct messaging seems to be the biggest risk, is that you think you're communicating with another 13 or 14-year-old. In fact, it's someone who's much older than that, who's looking to take advantage of you, who's using social media to basically groom some people and get them to do things that they want them to do.
Grooming is certainly part of it, and also just bullying is an enormous part of it as well. And anyone who's got anything to do with schools at sort of an adolescent level there knows that that it's just incessant, that there are a lot of kids out there just willing to, keyboard warriors largely, looking to create confrontation, and there's nowhere to hide for these kids. They're locked into these things. So I reckon at least, if the law says, this isn't supposed to happen, that, the kids aren't supposed to be on there to start with, that's some grounding for parents to be able to say, hey, look, sorry, we've got to put it away.
Yeah, correct. And I think that's the thing that the government's done quite cleverly, is they've said, it's not your responsibility, parents. We're saying you can't do it, so we're taking it away from you. Because in the household, it's pretty hard when your child, and my child is very mature, so it's okay for my child wouldn't do something like that.
Yeah.
So it's one of those things that when it's like, look, sorry, the law says it. But already I've seen stories where parents are being asked or encouraged or tricked into helping out their children provide ID, face ID.
Yeah.
I was asking to take a photo to prove I'm a certain age. Can I just use your photo, Mum? Can I use your face?
There are certainly going to be ways around it, but at least it will save some, I think. There's got the tremendous capacity to save some. And look, the gun laws that were brought in Australia in 96, we haven't had any mass shootings, but it hasn't stopped all shootings.
No.
So there's going to be some cracks there, but it'll save a lot more people.
And I actually think the way you get a teenager to do something is to say you're not allowed to do it.
Yeah.
I missed that trick. I should have said to my kids, you're not allowed to clean up your room, you're not allowed to clean up the kitchen, you're not allowed to help
Mum.
Mum.
I'm happy about the state of your room right now. Well
That's
done.
Right.
In fact, let's celebrate that.
So telling them they can't go on social media obviously is a challenge to some.
Yeah.
I actually, from what I've seen over the last couple of weeks, there have been people who have boasted about the way they've gotten around it. There are people who are advertising almost the way they've gotten around it.
Yeah.
And I think that will happen initially, but I think it will become almost, okay, we accept it now. There'll be a bit of a challenge, and kids taking it to the High Court. There'll be some resistance to begin with, and then we'll eventually say, it seems okay, and let's just accept it as part of the norm. The fact that you've had kids who have had it in the past and suddenly cut off, and then maybe a 15-year-old who might then get it again next year, it won't be that big an issue. And then as kids are growing up, I think it'll just be standard, common, it'll be okay. But certainly in the early days, a lot of challenges for the social media companies. And we've talked about it before.
Yeah, for sure.
That's where the responsibility lies.
And there'll be pushback as well. In fact, I think there has been pushback already from Reddit as well.
Yeah.
But look, the legislation was written by a retired High Court judge, so he was at least part of it, and so you'd hope they'd have their bases covered.
Yeah, and I think they do. But the technology is what I've been finding fascinating. So it's not just looking at your government-issued ID. It's not just looking at a photo of you at a certain period of time. It's not just looking at what you do and the sites you go to and the other friends that you've got. It's all of that. And that's where it's pretty clever in weighing up a whole range of those different parts of it. So I've read some stories where there have been 25-year-olds captured in this because they might go and still play with Lego. So, for example, it's, hold on, Lego, 25-year-old, that doesn't look right.
Yeah.
And then, no, I hear some other steps to show that I'm actually really 25. And there have been some people who have been 12 or 13 who have been let through the gates because they might look a bit older and they might have put some steps in place to make it look like they're older. They might be searching on osteoporosis or menopause or superannuation, various things that they might look for that an older person might look for. So at this stage, it certainly seems to have been capturing a lot of people. There's a few famous TikTok accounts or, famous is probably the wrong word, but popular TikTok accounts, and suddenly they're being told, or the bio says, this is now managed by my mum or dad. So the younger people who were creating industries in their own right in terms of what they were doing on TikTok, for example, now, mum and dad, in inverted commas, are now managing those sites for them. So how much of that goes on? And mum and dad probably like the income those kids were bringing in as well, so they don't want to lose that income stream. Is it still going to be there in a couple of years' time when they turn the age of 16? I don't know. That they've lost followers then. Who knows?
Well, I mean, we know that there are people who are going to find a way around it. There'll be problems with that. But I hope one of the symptoms of this, well, what happens in the next 2 or 3 years is that we'll see increases in sales in Lego and cricket gear and BMX bikes and things like that. And,
quite possibly.
It just, we'll see kids finding another way around.
Yeah. Look, I think it'll be a whack-a-mole to begin with. There'll be a way to pop up, and then there'll be some sites that go, right, we'll stop that one, and there'll be another way to pop up, and they'll stop that one. But I actually think it'd be quite fascinating being inside one of these social media companies saying, okay, how are we going to accurately verify? What are the steps we can put in place? And that'd be a whole mental challenge in itself, trying to work out the ways that you can do that. But one thing we know the social media companies have got is data. They have got a truckload of data.
Yeah.
One of the sites that I read about the technology being used was just the way you move your mouse can indicate your age. Now, it'd be difficult for you and I to look at someone moving a mouse going, look at that. But when you've got millions, hundreds of millions of users, and you know their ages now, and you analyse the way they move their mouse, then suddenly you can say, I think this person
maybe
is
if the
older.
fact that you're using a mouse makes you old, and if you're just using a phone.
Well, and that's exactly right. That might be part of it. How are you accessing the social media sites? If it's always on your phone, it's a pretty good chance you're not age 50. You're probably maybe a bit younger. So all those sort of things, looking at that and analysing all of that's quite fascinating. But a lot to play out here.
It'll also be interesting to see what other countries try this too.
Yeah, no, I'm fascinated with that as well.
What I'm excited about. I mean, there are some other issues where people claim that we're too small to be and too insignificant a country to be of any sort of influence at all. But Australia hasn't done that since World War One. You know, we've always tried to stand up and be counted.
Yeah.
And so.
And it's not a good enough excuse, I don't think.
No.
I'm only a small player in this. It doesn't matter what I do. No, it matters what everyone does. And if everyone took that attitude, no change would ever happen. Because sometimes huge change happens when some small, supposedly insignificant person or group says, that's not good enough, let's do something about it. And then suddenly, bang, it changes. So Australia could lead the world in this. Or
so interesting to see.
We could fall flat in our face. So.
Well, we'll wait and see.
Hopefully not.
In a bid to decrease carbon emissions in a sky overloaded with greenhouse gases, it seems that private industry has taken the onus in a lot of ways here. Perhaps there are profits to be made for the early adopters of green tech. Now, if there was an industry that may be forgiven for sitting on their hands for the time being, we might have allowed carbon emission leeway for the aviation industry. Now, we've dissected this issue several times before on this podcast, but Air New Zealand never read the playbook clearly, and they're going into overdrive now to find greener answers for aviation and diving right into electric and hydrogen-powered commercial flight and the technology behind that. Now, while they're not there yet, Matt, it's exciting to see them ploughing ahead in the field at least.
Yeah, I don't like it when New Zealand beats us at stuff, though. It hurts me to the
leading
core.
the world.
I don't like it when they beat us in sport, which they regularly do in rugby.
Surely we can claim ownership of this when it succeeds.
Well, normally that's what we do, isn't it? Russell Crowe succeeds, and we go, he's Aussie.
Although when the name of the company's called Air New Zealand, it's really hard. But we'll find a way, folks.
The Kiwis do seem to be quite good with ingenuity. I know with various software companies, they've been quite good at being innovative with that. We find that they're actually quite good for a small nation in terms of a whole range of things, whether it be in the sporting field or in the business world.
Definitely punching above their weight, and
that's
good
right.
on them. Well done,
I hate to say that, but it's true. I've got to give them their effectively they have been quite good in a whole range of areas. In this particular one, there's a couple of things that make sense here. Air New Zealand say that 60% of their flights, their regional flights, are under 350 kilometres. Now, we've talked about before, probably 400 kilometres is the sweet spot, or maybe even around the maximum that electric aircraft will fly. You start to go further than that, you need so many batteries that the plane becomes heavier and bigger, so then you create a bigger plane to fit all the batteries in, and then you can't go as far and it just spirals down. But around that 400 kilometre mark seems to be a sweet spot. So if you've got 60% of all your flights going 350 kilometres, you go, well, that's not a bad spot to be able to say, let's look at electric. The other part that I think, this hurts me to the core as well, the fact that they're so far in front of us, 85% of the energy grid in New Zealand is generated by renewables. So if you're going to use electric aircraft, then you probably want some way of producing that power that's through renewable energy, not through burning coal. Yeah. So 85% of your power coming from renewables, 350 kilometre flights, well, it makes sense. So they've started doing some testing. There's an ALIA, A-L-I-A CX-300, that's an electric aircraft they've been doing some testing with. And one of the things I found fascinating about it, and I've seen a few aircraft like this, the propeller was at the rear of the aircraft. Now, most of the time we see propellers, they're on either the nose, if it's a single propeller aircraft, or on the wings, if it's dual propeller. But I wondered whether or not, and I haven't been able to find any definite data on this, but whether or not the fact that an electric aircraft is so much quieter, that taking away the propeller noise from being near the front and putting it at the rear adds to that experience of a very quiet aircraft.
Yeah, so you're sitting in the cabin, you're leaving all the sound behind you.
Yeah, that's right. And now, if you're burning fuel to internal combustion engine like a normal aircraft would do, then you're going to have to burn that somewhere. So you're probably not much point putting it down the back. You can't.
Yeah, you'll get vibrational energy through the fuselage, all that sort of stuff.
All that, that's right. So putting it on the wings, putting it on the nose makes sense. But when you take that away, you think, well, the motor itself is making next to no noise. There's still a bit of propeller noise. If we stick the propeller noise at the very back, well, what
you're going to feel like you're gliding.
Exactly right, you would.
Serenity.
And that's right, serenity now. So you put the propeller at the back, you've really only got the noise of the plane cutting through the air, which is still going to be a certain amount of noise. It's cutting through the air at great speed. But I thought that was pretty impressive. So you've got the ALIA CX-300. Have a look at it. They're also working on not just the technology of flying the plane, which kind of makes sense, but the charging technology. So I think they're going to get better at the moment. They're getting to the point where they can fully recharge in about 90 minutes. Now, normally when you're turning an aircraft around, land, get those passengers off, get the new passengers on, it's not sitting there on the tarmac for 90 minutes. So I can see that they want to develop that further. But at least they're thinking about that in terms of a commercial operation, because at the moment, everything that we've looked at before has been, how do we make this thing fly and how do we make it fly for long enough? The fact that they're starting to look at charging...
I'm going to assume that fuel costs are going to decrease enormously, the cost to charge as opposed to the cost to fuel up.
Yep.
So then you could afford to have more planes on the ground
Quite possibly,
it could be rolling through a larger fleet maybe.
Yeah, well, that's a good point as well. But I think they'll nail the problem with just faster charging. I think they'll get to the point.
Yeah.
Because it's probably, I'm not an aircraft expert, but when a plane lands and then takes off again, it's got to be at least 30 minutes, but maybe 45 minutes.
Imagine if you could drop in and drop out a battery.
Well, that'd be interesting as well.
The way to go.
The other thing that they're working on, which is very exciting, is hydrogen. Now, we have talked about hydrogen a little bit. One of the issues there is that you've got better energy density out of hydrogen, but you've got to keep it somewhere. And hydrogen's fairly low density, so you don't want a big bucket carrying around with all this hydrogen. So you want high pressure containers or containers that can handle high pressure.
And they're expensive.
That's right. And getting to the point where you can have it at the higher pressure you can have it, the more energy you're going to be able to store there. So they're also working as part of this trial is to get to the point where you can have hydrogen stored in there, because again, we know that longer flights will probably be solved by hydrogen. Sustainable aviation fuel, sure, but hydrogen will probably get there. So they're working on lightweight composite hydrogen tanks for aviation. So that'll be stored inside the wings, just like a normal aircraft stores its fuel inside the wings, and then having it some way to pressurise that enough that you can then start to get longer flights. Now, are we going to get Sydney-LA flights? Are we going to get those sort of length flights out of that? Maybe not for a while. But I start to think when you forget the 400 kilometres, when you get Sydney to Perth flights, those sort of 4 or 5 hour flights, I think that's where you'll start to use hydrogen.
Once it gets commercially competitive, the technology will increase again. You'll have more minds thinking about this.
So I think we'll end up with 3 technologies for a time. I think we'll end up with sustainable aviation fuel for those long-haul international flights. You'll end up with hydrogen for medium-length flights, and then electric, absolutely, for those short flights. And that may mirror what happens with ground transport as well. I think we'll end up with electric cars like we do now. Longer, we might have hydrogen, and there may be someone that's doing very long, maybe trains even, very long-haul routes might end up sticking with some form of internal combustion.
It would not surprise me if we live to see the end of fossil fuels.
Yeah, wow. How scary and how exciting.
Okay, drone fans, we've got a big story for you coming right up. One enormous thing that drones have done so well for us in recent years is enable a bird's eye view much more cheaply, much more conveniently, with greater versatility than any technology that came before it. Now, as anyone with experience piloting a drone will attest, orientating and operating a camera on a drone takes a little bit of getting used to. And if you're recording footage, well, you're limited to a field of view that's directly ahead of the camera, which requires you to have some sort of peripheral awareness as well when there's already so much to see that's distracting for you. But what if the camera were able to take 360-degree footage? Then, if you had a VR headset, you'd be able to see everything by just turning your head. Matt, 360-degree vision, even on playback after this drone has landed.
This is very cool. And I do admire drone operators. So I've played with drones and tried to fly and move the camera, and I needed my third hand to do all of that at the same time. And I was watching...
too much to think about.
It is, absolutely right, because you've got to kind of concentrate on where you're flying the drone, or the height and all the rest of it. But I was watching some MotoGP one day, and they're using drones a lot in F1 and
Well,
MotoGP.
yeah, just the aerial footage that we get of anything these days.
Well, in the past, you would go to a MotoGP race and you'd forget the noise of the motorbikes. You'd have the noise of the helicopters flying around above you, taking the footage. Now, you don't have that. You have the drones. But I watched this one day. The bikes are coming at you at 250, 300 kilometres an hour, and this drone was flying along towards them. And then as the first rider went past, the drone came along, flew towards them. The camera spun around and then watched it and then started following it along. And I went, that's a good drone operator. That's a guy. It's almost like he was an expert, paid to do it.
Motorbike. That's fantastic.
So that was pretty cool. And I couldn't do that with my limited drone skills, but I reckon now I could do it easily because I've now got...
You don't even have to turn your drone around.
That's right. Just fly whatever. So it's got an 8K 360-degree camera. And what it's got is basically 2 cameras. It's got a camera on the bottom and a camera on the top. 360-degree view, but they do 8K, so you get that incredible resolution.
Yeah, but it's not really 360. It's got to be like 720 or 1080
it's a complete sphere.
or something like that.
That's right, yeah.
You can see a complete sphere.
And exactly as you said, you put on a headset, and then as you move your head around, you're seeing all around you in the drone, either during flight or the footage that's recorded for after the flight.
But yeah, also on playback. That's the amazing thing. So you can watch the replay however you'd like to.
Now imagine an eagle with its incredible eyesight sitting up there, hovering around, looking down, seeing a mouse that's going to go down and pull up out of the ground and away it goes. But you think of an eagle having that incredible vision all over the place, like just being able to see everywhere. And I just thought this would be how this would look. I haven't actually looked at the footage from this yet, but this would be a bit like how it would look. I think you're sitting there above the ground and you just got this view of everywhere at really high resolution. Probably not quite as good as an eagle yet, but at very high resolution.
But we're on the way, right?
Yeah.
And I'm even thinking about the cricket and how the footage from cricket from watching old 80s games and the retro games compared to what we've got now and the cameras that we've got now, it just pales in comparison. But imagine if you had just 3 or 4 of these drones. you've got every angle covered. So
Every
when
angle.
that catch, did he actually take that catch?
Yep, that's right.
No, we can see exactly whether or not he took the catch.
And given the fact it's 8K, because sometimes you do see the footage from the cricket and there's just a bit of a blur there where the shot was taken.
Yeah.
So they've got 8K, that's at your normal 30 frames per second, but you've also got the ability to go 5.2K at 60 frames per second, 4K when you go to 120 frames per second. So you've got pretty good slow motion coverage at still pretty high resolution. The cameras on these, they're just little tiny cameras, but they're just getting such incredible resolutions out of them.
Amazing.
So that is fascinating. They also do this clever thing where there's a drone in the middle of the camera that faces down and the camera that faces up, but they actually stitch that together so you can have a complete 360, 720, 1080 degree view as you move your head up and down and around. It doesn't go, oh, there's a little plane of nothingness there.
Yeah.
It stitches that together via the cameras that are on the bottom and the top of the actual drone itself. So you do get that absolute everywhere you look, you've got that incredible drone.
We live in the future.
We do live
Lots
in the
to be
future.
excited by if you're a drone pilot.
Well, exactly right. And even if you're not a drone pilot, if you're a mug like me.
Well,
if
you're happy just to watch the MotoGP, like you've never watched it before.
Yeah, that's exactly right. Now, one of the things they do with this is it does support up to 1 terabyte micro SD cards because there's a lot of footage, there's a lot of data that's being recorded. When you start recording in 8K, there's a lot of data. Then you start recording 8K 360 degree, there's a lot of data being recorded. So you do need that sort of size memory. You can stream that information back as well, but realistically, to get that footage at the right resolution, you'd want to record on the micro SD card.
Great for family picnics. The regular finger prick test that sufferers of diabetes endure on a daily basis is a pretty tough going, I've got to say. I'm not a diabetic at all, but I hope I never am. But that's got to be a fair sort of inconvenience. But that sort of invasive monitoring routine may be soon to become a thing of the past with recent developments in wearable tech, Matt.
One of the things that's actually been a great breakthrough for diabetics has been the under-skin constant monitoring. And I've seen friends of mine that have had that, have been doing bike rides with them, and you'll hear a little beep starting going off in their back pocket and, my blood sugar's just getting a bit low or high or whatever they've got to do. And so that's been a big breakthrough, but it's still a bit unpleasant sticking something under your skin to be permanently there and then hooked up to a little device. So all of that's a bit of a pain.
Yes.
They've had versions of this which uses Raman spectroscopy to look at the actual chemicals in your interstitial. Is it the right
that sounds
pronunciation?
right. Yep.
Interstitial fluid.
Yep.
It looks at that to see your blood sugar level. So it's not looking at your blood. It looks at your...
interstitial fluid is just the fluid that bathes your organs.
So they've looked at that in the past using some light sensors, but the problem is that the machines have been a bit like Monty Python, the machines that go bing. They've been a big machine that's been hooked up. And so, sure, if you want to go to the hospital and use light to check your blood sugar levels, you can do that. You've been able to do that since about 2010, but it's been a big machine.
Yeah, major inconvenience.
Major inconvenience, and you're not going to have one of those in your home. They got to the stage where they got it down to, say, the size of a printer, a large printer, but still not great.
Yeah.
So these latest developments now have come about because they're using Raman scattering with near-infrared light from a second angle. And this is where I love, we talk about so often, where it's just like, who thought of that?
Yeah, just the thinking that goes behind there. Someone goes, I know what, let's just look at it from two angles.
Exactly right. And someone said, no, that'd be silly. Someone said, well, I'm going to give it a go anyway.
Yeah.
That's right. And next thing you know, they've got it at the stage now already where they've got this down to the size of a shoebox. Now, you don't really want to carry a shoebox around with you, but they said it's probably only a year from the size of a shoebox to the size of a watch.
Yeah,
which is a pretty good breakthrough. But then,
so this is like Moore's law, isn't it? That things get smaller and smaller.
On steroids, that's right. Yeah. So then that's pretty cool because you could wear a watch, non-invasive, nothing stuck under your skin, no finger pricks for a blood sample. Just wear around a watch. It might be a separate watch. Maybe it'll be built into a watch, but a device of that size that's monitoring what's happening in your interstitial fluid basically through light, through nothing else. Now, I'm still fascinated by watches that take our heart rate by shining a light onto our skin and actually detecting what's happening with our blood pulsing through our veins. Yeah. But this is going next level using spectroscopy and something the size of a watch. Now, again, we're not there yet, but a year's time, there will be someone out there who'll have a prototype that's the size of a watch. Maybe it'll be a bulky watch, but it'll still be a watch size to check your blood sugar level. So,
there's some clever people floating around the place,
that's right. And fascinating stuff. It's absolutely fascinating.
Now, getting enough nitrogen into your crops hasn't really been a problem since Fritz Haber learned how to make ammonia from thin air about 120 years ago. But the Haber process is an energy expensive one and leans heavily into fossil fuels as the source for this. As we head into or towards 2050, we need to find better and new ways of doing things. So adding nitrogen to plants used to be as easy as dropping farm animal poop on them. But if we take a leaf from Burt Munro, and if you remember the story of the world's fastest Indian, where Burt Munro was played by Anthony Hopkins, I believe, maybe we could be resourceful and recycle our urine as fertiliser too, Matt. And the story goes that he used to do a wee on his lemon tree all the time. Well, he had awesome lemons.
That's right. And I'm a bit concerned about that. I don't know if I want to eat lemons from someone that's been weeing on them all the time.
Oh, it's not. It doesn't contain the wee. It contains the nitrogen from the wee.
Right. Yeah, I'm okay with that.
Yes.
So what they've done here is remember space food sticks? So I remember
they
used to have space food sticks. I haven't seen them for a long time, but space food sticks used to have some claim that I'm sure had no basis in fact that said used by people that go to space, all the nutrients you need. And you're going, really? It just seems like a nice sweet to me. So this, though, they say they've used space-grade nutrient recovery technology because, again, when you're in space, you've got to do something with your wee and you've got to do something with your poo as well. So that's all taken care of somehow, and it's not like they can just flush it down the toilet and it'll just go away somewhere. They've used that same sort of technology to say, why don't we try and recover nitrogen from people's urine? At the moment, normally, we go to the toilet, we flush the toilet, it goes to some wastewater treatment somewhere, and then basically goes into either a river stream or the oceans. Yeah. So it's not really used in any way, shape or form. This idea there's a company called Vuna Nexus, VUNANEXUS, a Swiss startup. And so they've got a process using this space-grade nutrient technology recovery where they're taking urine and taking out the nitrogen from it and then letting the rest go through normal wastewater.
So we produce urea and ammonia, and they are too, a little bit of uric acid, tiny bit of uric acid as well. All that nitrogen is just effectively going nowhere.
Right. And it can actually be harmful. You can actually get to the point where if you just pump that not in a treat enough state, pump that into a river system, that can actually create too much nitrogen in a river system.
And weeds and exotics and stuff.
Yeah, that's right. Depending on how big a population you've got and a whole range of variables there. But what they've done is they've said, let's take this and actually have some sort of biological reactor where it takes out that nitrogen and basically use it for something useful. So the idea here is they've got it set up already. They've got it set up in some public toilets, and that makes sense because if put it in my place, then myself and my wife go to the toilet, I don't know, a couple of times a day, 3 times a day. It's probably not going to be enough nitrogen to really make a difference on crops out there. But putting in public toilets...
no, I reckon by the end of the year, you just take your canister down to your local supplier and say, hey, look, I want to sell this back to you guys.
That's right.
And
they give you 50 cents for it.
Yeah, you beauty.
But I think putting it in public toilets, and they've got a few buildings already in Europe where they've got this installed where it's, again, a public area. So you've got lots of people, hundreds of people, thousands of people going to the toilet. I reckon at a nightclub where you've got people drinking, that produces a bit more urine, so put it in a nightclub. But that's the idea. You'll be putting this in places where you've got lots of usage. And one of their hopes is that there'll be a process where you're building a commercial building, whether it be residential apartments or whether it be a commercial office space type thing, and it will be, have you got, as part of your environmental outlook, something where you're recovering nitrogen from the urine in this building, because they've got it to the point where you could install this compact wastewater process in, say, the basement of a building. So all the urine flows through this, takes out the nitrogen, does what it needs to do there, and the rest goes on to the normal wastewater treatment, but you're collecting nitrogen to then use, sell it off, give to farmers, give to people in your apartment block and say, grow some of your plants. I'm not sure.
But we're talking about urban farming as well. So we have these, these high-rise buildings. And so some of the future thinkers are thinking, okay, we can be growing plants along those walls.
Yeah.
So we might be growing crops on the side of skyscrapers. Yep. And this would go a long way to fertilising them.
Yeah. So they actually are selling already a product called Aurin, AURIN. It's Europe's first certified urine-derived fertiliser. So you can buy that now. It's probably not in great quantities, but you can buy that now for household or for commercial use for a farmer. Yeah, so it's quite fascinating. So we will find more ways to use our urine. We know that some countries, some areas, they actually do drink their own urine after it's been treated. we've got to become used to that. We've got to be able to save
We
our
almost got to the
resource.
stage here in Australia at one stage there, recently too, with Goulburn and Toowoomba were both looking at, an option because their dams had dried up, of recycling urine, and the people voted that they didn't want to do it.
But it'll happen. Without a doubt, it will happen. And this might be one of the ways it will happen, that you take some of the good things out of that urine and then treat it so that it's ready to be drunk again.
Now, this next story probably has a more fitting spot in an Easter episode more so than the Christmas one, but how good are you at picking spoiled fish? Have you ever opened the bag to cook a delightful fish curry and wondered to yourself if that fish was, as we may say, completely legit? I don't know. I reckon all fish smells a bit dodgy. I'm much more inclined to go for the other option over the fish. But the question mark in the kitchen, or the question marks in the kitchen, may soon become a thing of the past now that technology has learned how to do a taste test, Matt.
Yeah, well, it's actually something where we know there's some biological markers in fish as it decays. And that usually presents itself because it smells a bit. And you might even look at it, you might go, oh, maybe the eyes are a bit cloudy, maybe the gills look a bit bruised, but there's an odour there as well. So it doesn't sound attractive, does it? So I'm with you, give me a steak any day. So some of these early decomposition processes that occur have got some compounds, but we smell them a bit, but you probably go, oh, if I cook it up long enough, it'll be okay. That's right.
Yeah.
Now, there's a product or a compound called hypoxanthine, called HX, as a biomarker, and the concentration of that rises progressively as the fish deteriorates. So some researchers from the American Chemical Society have got a microneedle-based freshness sensor. So basically you come along, you stick this little needle in, and it will tell you how much of the HX is actually in that fish. So it can detect down as low as 500 parts per billion. If it's only got 500 parts per billion, it's fresh, it's fine, no problems at all. And then they do tests. They've done a whole range of tests. They tested it 0 hours, so your fish is just dead, and 6 hours, 12 hours, 24, etc., and then look at how those HX levels increase. And essentially, they do increase as a fairly linear scale, but also you'll get to the point where you go, that's the point now that fish is not good enough to actually eat. It starts to become an issue for humans to eat that. And so once we know that level, how much HX is in that particular fish, that's the point we say, no, this fish is no good, and then you probably scale it back to have a safety margin in there as well. So you would literally be able to go to the fish market, have a little device with you, stick it in the fish, don't buy that fish, see this one, yep, that's okay, away you go.
Wow.
Yeah, so that's pretty cool.
That's pretty cool. AI is now well and truly commonplace everywhere. Now, AI artwork, video and music features heavily on social media platforms across the internet. What used to take painstaking days, weeks, months and years to do with a human brain, generative AI can do in seconds or maybe a minute or two. And that includes writing books. Matt, it cannot be too long before AI-authored books hit the shelves.
I think they're out there already, and some would argue that the old Mills and Boons books were probably almost AI anyway.
Yeah. Easy pickings.
They had a formula, didn't they? There was a specific formula.
They're probably
Mills
the
and
same book. They just swapped names around.
Probably. It was Mary this week and it was John next week. So they definitely had a formula. That would be something that I think would be very easy to feed to AI and say, here's the formula we've used, go and write the same formula. Now, there's a major book chain, Waterstones, who have said, we're actually looking at stocking AI-generated books, but two things. We're going to have a section. This section is AI-generated books. Every one of the books in here is AI-generated, and they're all going to be labelled AI, and I think they're just doing a little bit of a testing the process and say, so it's up to you. If you would like those books, we will stock them for you, consumers out there. If you don't like them, that's fine. We won't stock them. But I think what they'll do is they'll stock the shelves. Here they are, AI, and then look at the sales.
Then they'll start to leak into the other sections as well. And it'd be hard to pick as to whether or not an author is AI unless it's declared.
So we need some sort of regulation, some sort of protocol where if AI is used in this, then you've got to say something. But that's relying on people's honesty.
But then there'll be people who say a book's a book's a book, and a good story is a good story, whoever writes it. But it'll just, I don't know, I think we're losing something, aren't we?
Well, I think so. And I think what we'll lose, generative AI relies on taking what's out there and using that to generate new stuff.
Yeah.
But it's not left field stuff. It's not creative. It's just regenerating. And that's what we want to see. We want to see that creativity. And humans are good at that creativity.
This is a bad time to bring up, though, that Albert Einstein said that about 0.0001% of us actually have an original idea. So even the authors that are out there writing are probably just borrowing ideas and just reworking those.
And possibly, but hopefully they've had some human experience. Hopefully they've had something where they had something happen to them and they then talk about that and it's their view of that particular situation. But, yeah, if you read the book and it feels like an interesting book to read and it's got a good beginning, middle and end, then you kind of go, what the heck? So I think we'll see a bit of it. I just don't know whether consumers will love it. But again, consumers will take the easiest route sometimes. I know sometimes you'll say, Australian made, put Australian made stickers on everything and say to the consumers out there, buy Australian made. And they do that until they go, oh, this one's a bit cheaper. And they buy the overseas made one. So maybe the same thing. Look, don't support AI, support real authors. And they go, oh, that AI book's $20 and the real one's $30. Oh, you know what? I just got to buy a Christmas present. $20 sounds better to me. Keep an eye on that. You will see some books out there with AI labelling on them.
It's coming. Now, one of the unfortunate side effects of modern medicine is that in allowing people to live longer, diseases like dementia become more and more prevalent each year. Japan has a substantial older population and healthcare workers are very serious about supporting dementia sufferers to stay safe and healthy while maintaining their dignity. And Matt, of course, the clever use of tech is at the hub of this.
So Japan has got a problem, but it's a good problem to have in some ways. Japan typically sits in the top 5 of countries around the world where you're going to live the longest. So about 84.8 years is the median average or the average age of someone living in Japan. Monaco usually tops the list. So Monaco, 86 years of age. So I'm not sure if that is a reflection on the people that end up moving to Monaco, because a lot of people do move to Monaco that have got some wealth behind them and maybe they're being well looked after.
Own luxury yacht. That could help.
But Japan does quite well. But this creates this other problem, as you say. When the average age of people died at was maybe 50, we didn't seem to have too many brain issues because we didn't really
live long enough.
Exactly right. But now people are living a lot longer. Then we're seeing, sure, we can keep other parts of the body going, but the brain, we don't know enough about it. So in Japan, to give you some scary stats, there are 18,000 people living with dementia. Sorry. There were 18,000 people with dementia that went missing last year. 500 of those were found, unfortunately, no longer with us. So that's pretty scary when Mary's gone for a walk and got out of their aged care facility and we can't find Mary and then we find her unfortunately dead. So that's a problem that's creeping up because you've got 65 or people that are age 65 and above in Japan make up 30% of Japan's population. So there's a large amount. What are we doing about it? Well, there's a whole range of things. GPS trackers are being used to help locate dementia patients. So that's something that often people are putting those on. And there are some prefectures in Japan that will actually issue a GPS wearable tag. So you don't have to worry about the family having enough money to get grandma a GPS tag. That prefecture says this is a big enough problem, we're just going to issue them. If you're aged over 65, come and pick up your tag and you can be tracked by the state. So maybe that's a worry for some people, but also those loved ones around them. So that's quite interesting. There are convenience stores that are doing real-time notifications. So when there is someone that's gone missing, they figure that convenience stores, a lot of people go to them, but also maybe the person with dementia says, I'll go and buy a drink. So they have these real-time notifications appearing in convenience stores. So again, getting the community around to help with dementia patients. So that wasn't a bad one as well. And then you've got some work being done by Fujitsu and Acer together, and they're analysing walking patterns just to see whether people have got early signs of dementia, but also when people walk into something like a convenience store to go, that person there looks like they've got dementia just by the way they're walking. So maybe just be on the lookout. Maybe for the person behind the counter, just ask where they're from. Where's home? Are you okay? Just to let people know. So imagine someone walks into the store, there's a alert goes off. Maybe this is a dementia person because of the way they walked into the store. Just that slight
this
difference
is
in gait.
Bringing old school village sort of community together, isn't it?
And I think if you're
looking out for each other,
do that anywhere, Japan is the place to do it. My experience with Japan is that people do actually care about each other still, and this would work in Japan, maybe not in some other places. So they've also got a new robot. They're being developed by Waseda University called AIREC, AIREC, It's a 150 kilo humanoid robot, but basically can assist with a whole range of tasks like laundry, putting on socks, cooking, basically just helping with a range of things that someone might be living with dementia at home but needs some help around the home. So, again, not rolled out en masse yet, but helping with a whole range of things. The other part they've got with robots is helping not just with clinical needs but social isolation. So if you're living at home by yourself, you might get a bit lonely. Who's coming to visit you? Do I remember the last time someone talked to me? Then having robots to actually help in that sort of social environment as well. So whole range of things that I'm sure will be thought of first and tested in Japan, but then will roll out across the world.
Yeah, almost definitely, yeah. With AI threatening to usurp a lot of people in their workplace, one of the most obvious roles, I guess, that AI will step into is on Hollywood film sets. Already producers are out there with a plan to make the first AI film star. Matt, I can feel myself getting upset by this, but I'm not sure why.
I actually find it fascinating when people drew pictures for cartoons and they would have an incredible skill to draw a picture of Bugs Bunny and then the next picture where Bugs Bunny's moved a little bit. So that's an incredible skill. And then someone came along with computers and then someone came along with Toy Story, for example, and said, what are you doing that for? What are you drawing pictures and doing another picture for? We can just do all that with computer animation. So forget about that. Did all the people who used to draw those pictures one frame at a time jump up in arms? Maybe they did. I'm not sure. But we kind of accepted the fact that it had moved on to something more efficient. And we now watch cartoons, especially if you've got kids, that are incredible masterpieces of filmography and cinematography.
That's right.
But we don't really get up in arms and upset about the fact that they're not being generated by people drawing individual pictures.
Well, if you look at the credits roll, there seems to be a lot more people who are responsible for the animation now than there ever was in an old Walt Disney movie.
Yeah, quite possibly. But it's all done computer animation.
Yeah, it's all done with computer animation.
Different skills.
Yeah.
So there's a producer who said, you know what, I'm going to produce an AI-generated actress and just see if I can stir up Hollywood a little bit. So it started off with various cartoon faces and got them to be more humanoid, went through a whole range of iterations, basically got through about 2,000 different versions before finally she had someone that went, this is good enough to be a human. And then said, okay, let's have a look at that now and let's see how we would use this particular actress, Tilly Norwood, in ads in Hollywood. How could we insert this into various movies? And without a doubt you could. And if you look at some of those ones, I'm thinking of the movies that had, or there's a range of different movies that had humans doing various acting and then cartoon characters in them as well. Yeah. And I remember seeing some interviews with some of those actors and they would say there'd be a tennis ball in the spot that Bugs Bunny would appear or that some cartoon character would appear. So they'd be acting against a tennis ball.
What was the first? Was it Who Framed Roger
Rabbit?
Yeah, that's it.
That was one I was thinking of, but I'm sure there's been lots of other examples.
Yeah, afterwards, yeah.
But again, that actor was interacting with something that wasn't there. What's to stop the same thing happening with Tilly Norwood? You go and act and you're a real life actor, you're doing your scenes and there's nothing there, but they just drop in Tilly Norwood later or some other AI generated actress. How long before we have the first full motion picture that's just got everyone that looks like humans on there, but they're all AI generated? Imagine the script generated by AI, the sound score generated by AI, the actors being AI, the entire project AI. But again, you'd see the credits roll out at the end and there would still be thousands of people involved in making all this happen, but they just weren't actors or script writers. They were involved in different ways. So keep an eye out for Tilly Norwood. When I've had a look at Tilly, she looks pretty impressive. She looks like a well-credentialed actress who's doing her thing, being a very good actress and looking good and doing all the things they should be doing as an actress, but just not really there.
Not really there. The times they are a-changing. And that's all we have time for today, folks. There are only a few flecks of coconut left on the tray and maybe a stray currant or two to pick at. We have to wrap this episode up pronto. Thanks for another cracking Tech Talk, Matt.
I can't finish off the year without saying Merry Christmas to everyone. We've got a few days from when this is released before Christmas Day, so thank you for all those people that have listened throughout the year. We get lots of great feedback from people, and people still are downloading it, so they're still hopefully enjoying it as they go. So Merry Christmas to all those people. Happy New Year. Of course, we will be back next year, bigger, brighter, or maybe the same than ever, but we'll be back next year doing more of this because people seem to love the content we're producing.
And I'll reiterate that, folks. Thank you, ladies and gentlemen, for tuning in once again to Tech Talk with Matthew Dickerson, the only podcast that contains actual traces of gold, frankincense and myrrh for your enjoyment. My name is James Eddy, wishing you a very Merry Christmas. The year isn't over, though. You can still catch us next week and into the new year. So as you're looking for ways to shed the Christmas excesses, you can keep us on in the background with all the latest news from the world of technology. Merry Christmas to you all, and we'll see you very soon.